Hey, I'm Gina. Welcome to the Oh, There's More podcast, a space to get real and go deep. No more just checking the boxes and going through the motions. It's time to live out the beautiful life that God has written for you. On today's episode, we are going to get honest about what the inner healing journey looks like, the different stages of it, and how you have a say. We've been talking about healing in different ways, and today I want to dive more into the actual journey and what that looks like. I don't know who else is like this, but there are things that you can come into an awareness about, and then you can't go back to not knowing. You can't unsee it. And this is what inner healing has been like for me. I had an awareness that there was some deep hurts that were still playing a role in my life and getting to have a say where they shouldn't. And I knew I could choose to pursue healing. And naturally, I thought as I followed where God was leading that it would be good. I even in some ways thought that it would feel good. Why not, right? You get the stuff off your chest, you heal the wounds, and they don't trip you up anymore. That has to feel amazing. And so I was all in. But I just want to be real about it. It's not easy as you go into the depths. You may feel that profound pain again and think, why on earth did I decide to do this? The truth is this: there are days that it will hurt like hell, but it will always, always be worth it because on the other side, you'll have freedom and healing will feel like a 1,000-pound weight has been lifted off of you. We're often not to blame for our reactions or how we treat others. Stick with me here. I know if I were to say that statement alone, even I wouldn't believe the words coming out of my mouth. We aren't to blame if we grew up having to find ways to protect ourselves with adaptive behaviors that have now turned into dysfunction or maladaptive behaviors. We can't help how we were raised, but it is our responsibility to do the necessary things to heal and to break those generational patterns of dysfunction. Whether someone chooses to accept that responsibility is a whole nother thing. It's like these different phases. First, you're just completely unaware, which oftentimes includes feeling like everybody else is to blame for all the things that we hate about our lives. Like, it's not me, it's them. If this would just get better. The next phase is where we become aware that there are things that we need healing from. And this is actually where a lot of people can get stuck because it feels way too overwhelming and way too scary to try to dive into the very things that have caused the most pain in their lives. The next step is accepting that we need healing. Like, we're done living this way. We will take the steps. We will put action behind the awareness. We are ready for something to change. And if that's us, then let's go. Inner healing is a choice. Will we choose dysfunction and harm, or will we press in and take one step at a time to do the work to heal? I'm sure you've heard this phrase either directed at others, someone saying it to you, or even you asking yourself the question, what is wrong with you? And what we want to be asking instead is, what happened to you? What's happened to you that's made you believe that you don't belong anywhere? What's happened to you that's made you believe that all men are liars and they cannot be trusted? What's happened to you to make you believe that no matter how hard you try, you'll never get it right? That list of questions could really go on forever. And this is why the different places I'm opening the door for you to get curious about are so, so important. This is a journey, it's a process, and it simply starts with your yes. When you've gotten to that place of recognizing you want something different, even if you don't know what that means or how to get there, and you're just willing to take the first step, you're agreeing to something that is equally hard and holy. You may find yourself saying, I thought this was supposed to feel good and it feels anything but good right now. Growth, healing, getting to a better place, it doesn't come without painful times. But in between those valleys of the deep healing, when the old thing happens and the old reaction doesn't, you will find so much joy. You'll recognize, like, wow, look how far I've come. And you'll see how much is healed. And that is just a treasure that no amount of money can buy. There's nothing quite like being truly healed in an area. And I'm not talking about just patched over. I'm not talking about just covering it up with behavior modification, but a place where your heart and your mind are transformed because you were able to see the lies that you believed and were operating from. It's a place where God has given you his revelation and his heart for you, along with his heart for the situation, and it will never be the same again. There used to be some specific painful memories that I would replay over and over in my head. And as I healed and addressed them in whatever way God was leading me to, the negative emotions tied to those memories were just gone. It was like a bridge had been taken out and I couldn't access them anymore. It was glorious. Have you ever gotten injured in some way, and then as you go about your day, it seems like no matter what you do, you hit that spot that you've hurt on what feels like anything and everything. That wound or the injury is just aggravated over and over again, and the pain shoots through you each time. Like, let's just give ingrown toenails an example, because it's like you stub your toe on everything and you're like, gosh, do I normally walk around kicking everything? Because I don't feel like I do. And then when that finally heals, you're so happy that it's no longer something that can cause you pain. You can wear your favorite shoes again. And when you accidentally kick into something, like barely, you don't have pain shooting through you anymore. That painful spot can be touched now. And what happens? Nothing. You don't feel it anymore. This is what happens when something is truly healed, but it's so often a process. I'm in circles where people go through inner healing and even deliverance, and there's almost this unspoken belief that in doing that a time or two, everything can be fixed and you're good to go. I myself actually believe that for a short period of time, until those things only got me so far in my healing journey. And that may work great for some people. But for me, it only went so far because of the layers and the depth of inner healing that I needed. So I had a little heart-to-heart with God because I just was not loving this process I was having to go through. I wanted to be done with this stage of things and moved on to all the fun and the glory of life with God. And if God is the same yesterday, today, and always, that means he's a God who heals, and he could just take all the junk out of me and we could be done with it all and just move on. I guarantee that I am not the only one who has thought this or felt this. There are a couple of things that the Lord showed me about why this was a process instead of instantaneous. It may not be true for you, but he did share that this applied not just to me, but to the women that he was calling me to bring hope and his healing to. So the first thing that he showed me was that I had lived a life of not being able to trust. He could heal the parts of me that were wounded all at once, and I would have zero reference of how to live this new life. The thing is that we have to be able to trust God in order to walk out the healing that he wants to do in us. So yes, he does the work, but on the other side of that work, we have to now live in that new mindset and actually interact with other people, with the world, with brokenness. We have to live that out in our relationships where others may still be in a place of deep wounds. The other thing is that if God were to take every one of my wounds and every misconception and every lie that I believed and was operating from in my life all at once and heal them, I would be completely turned upside down. Keep in mind that I'm someone who has experienced extended periods of trauma in their life as a child, and I had to learn ways to adapt to feel safe for most of my childhood. I'm someone who grew up in dysfunction, so this is what I knew for much of my life. I learned it as a kid, and then I acted it out for the next 15 or so years of my adult life. So to take that all at once and turn it into what would be considered normal or healed would feel like the floor fell out from under me. I would not know how to relate in any capacity in any area of my life and would be crippled by it. And I think that this is the part that some people in the church just don't have reference for. They don't understand what trauma is and how it affects us. There was this study done called ACEs, which stands for Adverse Childhood Events, and it measures things that had happened to a child before the age of 18 based off of 5 categories: physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, physical neglect, and emotional neglect. Of course, this doesn't cover like the full spectrum of what kids can experience growing up. There are other things that can come into play, like poverty and housing instability and other things, but it is a start. And the quiz is actually readily available online, so you can go take it yourself if you want. It's, I think, maybe 10 questions, and a lot of the websites don't require you to do anything but literally check the box and they give you a score, which is great. And thankfully, there are people who have never experienced these things or have only had 1 or 2 of them happen. Divorce happens to be one of those things, and so unfortunately, that's a really common childhood trauma for people to experience. But if that is the extent of it, then they're not going to have as much to work through as someone who has a much higher score. And what that means is the more that you score on this, the higher your exposure to trauma was. And they tie this to future problems in your physical health. Hello, I talked about this in another episode, and it's covered in depth in the book, The Body Keeps the Score, as well as social and emotional problems. It impacts us in major ways, as well as those around us, including our kids. And this is why healing is so crucial. But God doesn't want to cause more trauma in the process of healing us from our past trauma. So if it's going to take longer, because healing needs to take place by revealing things in a certain order, layer by layer, that is what God is going to do. He loves us so much that we, as his daughters, are more important than the healing, if that makes sense. Like, you as a person are more important than what level of your healing you can achieve. For God, the focus isn't on the healing, and we as his daughters are secondary. There's no measure of like, oh, you're a level 8 in wholeness, good job, I love you more. That isn't the God that we serve. He doesn't love us more today than he did 10 years ago. Just like his love for us isn't measured by what we can do for him, it's also not measured by how close to perfect we are. God's love for you is consistent and it's unwavering. And thank God, literally, for that, because that's the only way that we're able to keep climbing out of those valleys to the mountaintops where another layer has been healed and made whole. So keep listening to this podcast, or find others who speak to where you're at and help you heal. Find a trauma-informed Christian counselor if you feel like that's the next step. Reach out if you're in a place of not being able to unsee, but you're also paralyzed as to how to move forward. There's no single path aside from the one that God is right beside you on. As I've mentioned, there have been different legs, if you will, on this journey of mine to healing. And it has taken lots of different people and different ministries and different pastors and different counselors, because at each stage of the journey, I've needed something different. And that's okay. The beautiful thing is that God has equipped so many of his people to be able to walk alongside you. And I'm just so grateful. I'm genuinely so grateful that I get to be one of those people. I'm rooting for you. I'm praying for you. I know that healing is possible, even though the journey has been so incredibly difficult at times. I know it's possible, and it's not just possible for me, it's possible for you. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a rating or review, and share it with your people. You can go to my website, ginapeak.com, to find extra resources and info. Until next time,